broadcasting live from an undisclosed location in the universe. Welcome to Iggy Garcia Live, the show where metaphysics, holistic living, motivation, and inspiration come together to empower your mind, body, and soul. We will dive deep into the realms of metaphysical wisdom, exploring the fascinating connections between mind and matter. Get ready to ignite your inner spark and embrace a journey of self-discovery. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Iggy here, Mind of Iggy. So today, let's talk a little bit. Let's talk about the things we hear, the things we share. So, for a lot of you, I've been sharing my life story, a little bit about my past, and I've been pretty brief about it. But just to clarify, both my parents no longer on this plane of existence. They both have transitioned in 2018 and 2019, just before the pandemic hit. So I've been sharing a little bit about our history, a little bit about who we are. And the reason I share that is because it's my story to share. It's my story to document things that I was around, and some of my younger siblings don't even know some of the stories that I've shared. And see, even some of my aunts and uncles don't even know, because they only lived with us for a brief period of time. I was the oldest son, and I grew up in the family, so I was more keen and observant to things that happened. And I lived it. It was my story. It's what happened. And it's a story that I saw. It's a story that my dad shared, and everything I'm telling you is documented. So it's nothing that I'm sharing is not true. It is very, very true. You can go to the Board of Elections. You can find that my dad's paperwork will be there. You can go to the immigration. You can find his paperwork and all the times and dates. I don't know why I even have to share these things and being called irresponsible because I'm sharing. No, it's not irresponsible. It's a responsibility for me to share this story, because if it doesn't fit your narrative, you're either going to like it or dislike it. Narratives are important. So if you have a narrative that, people come to this country and vote illegally, your narrative is going to be that doesn't happen. And if your narrative is that illegal aliens vote, that's going to be your narrative too, right? Or undocumented people. Because when I came, we were called illegal aliens. So I'm not here to sugarcoat anything. I know that people aren't illegal. I get that. I understand that. But you got to remember, I'm a byproduct. I'm a child of the 70s and the 80s. And we had different ways to talk and communicate. And many of us still use some of that verbiage, and we find ourselves always having to catch ourselves saying something because we might be politically incorrect by sharing a thought or a voice or something came out of our mouth because that's where we grew up. I think I'm doing better. But I'll tell you one thing. My story is my story to share. I don't care if you don't like it. I don't care if you love it. I'm just here to share it. If it finds it and it moves you, fine. And if it triggers you and it bothers you, then fine. Maybe my story is doing its job. My story is telling the truth. And I'm here to tell the truth about how I experienced and what happened. My dad came in the 70s, yes. My mom too, and so did I and my sister. And we overstayed our tourist visa, like so many people do. Some people come here with work permits. The story is my dad was politically persecuted because he used to write a paper in Peru, and several politicians didn't like that. Is that a true story? I don't know. Even my aunts and uncles can't validate or share that story to me correctly or properly, because everybody has their own agendas and views about how they see their own personal siblings. I have my own siblings who I don't even talk to sometimes because they're too busy in their own worlds and they have issues with me. So the stories that I tell you and I share with you, I think are vitally important because it did happen. And to sit here and to pretend like these things don't happen, they do happen. Oh, Iggy, are you a Democrat, Republican? No, I'm neither. I'm a naturalized citizen of the United States. So anytime the United States says I'm not viable, they can just take my naturalization away. So that's why I share my story with you, not to be contrary or contradicting, but to prove that this stuff happens. And to show that it may not happen now, but it did happen then. In the 70s was loosey-goosey and things weren't controlled by computers like they are these days, you know, and things aren't monitored the same way, and there's cross-references. So for people to tell me that they don't buy it, or, you know, I'm irresponsible, or, you know, I'm causing friction. Listen, I say the things that people don't want to say sometimes, and it's uncomfortable for some people. For me, it's not uncomfortable. You know why it's not uncomfortable? Because I lived it. It's my story to share. It's my choice to share it or not share it. You don't need to be embarrassed with me or upset with me. I share my dad's story because my dad did what it took to make it and to come to this country and do the best he can. Did he always do it right? No. Did he do it right? Sometimes. He had his own personal dream, his own vision, you know, and I have my own personal dreams and visions. I tried to coattail on his vision, and it wasn't the same. That's why I do the work I do. But I'll never forget where I come from. That's one thing that I'll never forget, who I am, where I come from. I come from a family of people who immigrated to this country, like my aunts and uncles who immigrated with me as well. But I'm an immigrant to this country. I immigrate here. And immigrants sometimes do things that, you know, they're either ethical or unethical. Did my dad break the law? Of course he did, right? I'm not going to sit here and pretend like he didn't. But you know what? He got his reprieve when the government decided that, hey, you know what? You're pretty valuable to us. We'll give you your papers, but we won't give you your citizenship. He had his documentations, residency. We call it a permanent resident card, which you guys used to be called green card. That's the derogatory word, I guess now, green card. But anyhow, it took him 32 years to get his citizenship. Why? Because he ended up in the hands of the CIA. He ended up in the hands of people who wanted to use him for his brain and what he knew and how he could infiltrate. Was my dad? My dad wasn't like some Peruvian James Bond. That's not what I'm trying to paint him as. But he's the kind of guy that would do that. You know, he's the kind of guy that would, you know, he just had it in him to be able to be the chameleon and do that kind of stuff, that kind of work. That's his story, but he's no longer here to share it. I don't know all his stories about when he worked for the federal government. But he did share some things with me. Maybe I'll share with those things later in life, but not right now. I'm just here to share the story about how we got here and what it took to get here. You know, a lot of you guys see me and you don't know my story. I'm an immigrant. I immigrated here on TWA, man. I left with my little kid sister and my mom. My dad was already here. You know, with my aunts and uncles, we came, got on that plane, got off the plane. I didn't know what was going on. I was a kid. But there was a lot of things in the works, and there was a lot of things that happened. And, you know, I have to say, I'm very proud of my parents. They're very successful, and they're right. Maybe they weren't the billionaires, the zillionaires, the millionaires that a lot of people do when they come here. But I'll tell you one thing. They were hardworking. They took care of their family. They were proud. And they really, truly wanted to be part of this system, this unit, this family called the United States of America. And so many people here bash the United States of America because of its decisions and policies and stuff. But yet, you got a guy from another country who came here and had pride in something that wasn't even his. And he's a Peruvian. And, you know, he came here and he wanted to do better. And he did better. He did the best he could with the knowledge and the tools he had. Did he circumvent systems? Don't we all on some level? In some things? I'm not saying that what he did was correct, but you know what? He did it. And we're here. This is why I'm able to sit here, you know, in my house, in my office, and tell you this story. Because I would have a different story if I was still in Peru. My story would be a different story. But this is the story I have. This is the only story I can tell. This is the only story I can share with you. There are no other stories for me to be able to share. So feel confident when I share these stories with you. It's the truth. I have no benefit in lying to anybody about what I share. And if you still don't believe me, I don't care. Because I stopped caring what people think about me a long time ago. Sure, it hurts you a little bit, but you get over it. You move on. Because they have their own agendas, they have their own thoughts, their own feelings, and their own emotions. And I'm not here to prove and defend anybody, but I'm here to set the record straight for one thing. My parents, God bless and rest their souls in peace, you know, did what they could to survive in the situation they were put in. You know, my mom and dad collected beer cans and newspapers and metal, you know, in their car, not just a step van or a truck. I remember being there. I was in there with them. You know, my family did what it took to survive. Listen, if I share this story to you and it mortifies you, I'm sorry. But this is what people do when they come here sometimes when they don't have the means to survive and the means to work. Now, did my dad falsify his papers? Did he buy a false, IDs and stuff like you can still do today on the markets? Maybe. But I know one thing. Regardless of what they did, they bust their ass. And they bust their butts really hard to make sure that we had and that they had, you know. I remember my parents, working late. One parent was always there. But, they were always working. Could they work? No, that's the whole point. They couldn't work. But you know what? It also shows you that people were hiring people undocumented at the same time. So this stuff exists. So we can't pretend like it doesn't exist, like it's some kind of, we're living in some make-believe land, that things aren't happening. So am I a proponent that we should obey the law? Yeah, of course. I'm never going to be one that says, hey, we defy the law. But I understand also why people do what they do and why they come to this country. I'm not going to act like I don't. I may not agree with some of the things we do, but I'm not also going to sit here and pretend like this country is the worst country in the world, because it's not. Because this country has given me and many other people the opportunities. And I think when you come from someplace else and you're raised in that culture of, you know what, we're blessed for what we have, you have a different feeling. I remember going to school with friends and stuff, and they didn't have the same appreciation I had. I looked forward to 4th of July when I was a kid. I thought it was the most amazing thing. I still do. Why? Because people fought for this place. People fought for the independence of the country. Sure, we can get into the story about how things were taken and stolen from things. Of course, no one's going to deny that. But what are we going to do now where we're here? That's the point that I'm getting to. Now that we're here, where do we go? How do we move forward? How do we, move into this new system, this new creation of this country, instead of destroying it and battering it for what it does or doesn't do for everybody? Can we help everybody? Of course we can. Do we want to help everybody? I hope so. But it's our leadership. The people we vote for. It's the people that we think are going to support us. Sometimes 2020 is hindsight, so we don't know until people get into office if they're going to represent us properly. And sometimes they don't. But I'm going to tell you, nobody has the right to tell me that I'm irresponsible, that they don't buy it, that my story is not legit. Because you know what? That's a big F you to you, because you know what? My story is my story, and only I know my story, and I will share it to the best of my ability as I recollect it and recall it. Listen, I also, as a naturalized citizen, ran for the United States Congress. In 2004 and 2006, 1 year I was disqualified. Why did I run? Because I wanted to make a difference. Because my dad instilled that in me. My dad, I told you, my dad ran for office. And you can find those paperwork. And if you want to grunge through the paperwork and do it, go ahead. You can look for my stuff too. I'm in there too. People don't make this stuff up. Why would they? What is even the purpose of making stuff like this up? Because I don't understand, because it doesn't fit your narrative. Because you don't want anybody to hear, oh, somebody's sharing something that may or may not be true, but it's true. It doesn't fit your narrative because you think that it's going to prove and defend to some other political group to say, oh, you see, they do vote illegally. Oh, you see, they did let them through the war. Now, we came on TWA and overstayed our visa. And that's against the law. But we have different rights and different ways to process and approach these things. The laws have changed dramatically over the years. The oversight has changed dramatically over the years. So, I don't know. And everybody has their opinions about stuff. Listen, if an illegal alien or a migrant or whatever you want to call it can get documentation and prove that they're a citizen, even if it's falsified, then anybody can do legitimate work and get on their butt and get their stuff. Now listen, I don't like to get political, but sometimes I see things and I'm going, you're disenfranchised. Explain to me how you're disenfranchised. You were born in this country and you feel disenfranchised from your country? Where you have every opportunity to do just about anything you can if you motivate or put yourself and drive yourself to that. But yet you have the audacity to tell me that I can't share my story because it may make other people look bad, or may send a message that this is happening and people are going to say, "Oh, I told you so." This story needs to be shared, my friends. Why? Because I think it's important to share what people do in order to come to this space, come to this country, to be part of this country. We don't do this because we're trying to be sneaky or cheatful or whatever. We're doing it here because we want to be part of this, because you know what? It's amazing here. Yeah, there's some crappy stuff here, but you know what? There's crappy stuff everywhere. You know, I hear stories about people who moved out of the country because they don't want to be here, because they don't like America for some reason. I don't know why, but, you know, you're only dictated by the things that you see, I guess. But then they can't work in these other countries they go to because they didn't do the proper paperwork to be in these places. And then what happens when you can't work? Well, you can't pay your rent in the apartment that you rented. So you see, even if you left here and went somewhere else, unless you did the paperwork appropriately and properly, you're just an immigrant too. You're immigrating to that space. And you have to go by their rules and their ideologies and beliefs. And if you don't do it, they say goodbye. And they say, you know what? You don't fit with us. And basically, that's what we're saying here in this country, right? When we tell things to people, please comply, please learn. And if you can't, you don't belong here. But my story is my story. You have your story, I have my story. We all have stories. You have stories about your ancestors who came from Ireland, came from Africa, came from, you know, wherever you come from. And I have heard some of your stories, and you're proud about your stories. You're proud that they came on the boat, came off on Ellis Island, and their name is signed on the document. But yet you don't know anything other than that. At least I can say, hey, you know what? I came on an airplane, got off the airplane, signed my name on the paper, came off, went to school with kids. I didn't even speak English, you know, and still battled through all that, learning everything, being picked on because I was different. That's another story. I'm just here to share the story about my dad and my mom. Why? Because their memory and their legacy must continue, even if you like it or don't like it. And listen, it's my story. If you don't like my story, you know, you don't like my story. That's it. But you can't tell me that I can't share my story, that it's irresponsible to share my story, that you can't buy my story. Because my story is not for sale. Someone posted, like, I don't buy it. I said, you know what I responded? My story is not for sale. My story is not for you to judge. My story is for me to share. If you want to pick it apart, fine. It's still my story. How I experienced it, how I lived it, what I know. I know a lot of stuff. Do I choose to share everything? No, but some things I share because I'm proud. You know why I share that story? Because I'm proud of my parents. I'm proud of what they did and what they were willing to sacrifice. They were willing to sacrifice everything. And you know what? They probably would have made it in Peru too, I'm pretty sure. But you know what? They were willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that they could stay here and be part of this amazing salad bowl of people. You know? Were my parents, did they get it always right? No. My parents didn't always get it right. But my parents' story is a story that I share and I will always share. And like I said, if you don't like my parents' story, that's more about you than it is myself. You know? And I share things. And I share other people's stories too. Because stories are to be shared. And then you decide what's best for you. But my story about my parents and how they immigrated here and what they did to stay here, that's my story. And the things that they did while they were doing that, that's my story. If you choose to like or dislike it, it doesn't matter. It's still my story. It's my experience with the people that I love. Now listen, some of you guys should say, hey, I got a cool friend. He's got a wild story, but you know what? The way that he achieved to get here, his family to be here. My parents did more than I see some people in my friends group who are not even willing to try. My mom and dad. Listen, when I was a kid, when we needed clothes, when we didn't have the money to buy clothes, you know what we used to do? I don't want you to get mortified now. I don't want you to get all upset with me. But we'd go to the Salvation Army boxes. I don't even know if it was Salvation, but I think it was. It was a box, drop box. You know those drop boxes that you see sometimes? Well, what would we do? My dad would put me in the drop box, and he'd say, pull out some clothes, so see what was in there. And we'd sift through all the stuff, and then we check the clothes that would fit him, fit us. And a couple times we'd grab a toy or two. Because we were in need too, but we didn't understand, or maybe he did understand. But you know what? We went into those boxes. Why? Because that's what immigrants do. Sometimes we do things backwards, and we do things that are unusual to you. Listen, my dad was never afraid. My dad's the only guy I know that could go to Lowe's and get a discount on something that's brand new and say, hey, where's my discount, And they're like, oh, they joke around. And I was like, you give discounts. I know you give discounts. Because my dad was a negotiator. He was, that's why he ended up working for the CIA. Because they liked his attitude. A lot of you guys probably believe me or don't believe me. It doesn't matter. I can validate all this stuff. I owned the restaurant. My wife can validate. Everybody can tell you the things and the people we met. Listen, my dad went to George Bush Sr.'s inauguration with my mom. Met Margaret Thatcher. And some people are like, is that a real picture? Of course it's a real picture. Or my dad with Margaret Thatcher. He met her. My mom met her. You call my parents a liar? You call me a liar? That's not Photoshop. That's not AI, friends. No way. In the pictures with George Bush and Barbara Bush, that's my dad. That's my mom. I have the inaugural plates that were on his car. I have his senatorial commission papers that were given to him by the Senate for the work he did for this government, for this country. I may or may not share that with you. I don't know. We'll see. But I share this with you because we all have a story. We all come from somewhere. We have some background. Sometimes we don't share a story because we're embarrassed, but I'm not embarrassed of my parents. I forgave them for all the things that maybe I'm not in accordance with, but who was I really forgiving? I'm forgiving myself. Now, the only way that they're remembered is by Iggy opening his mouth and talking about it. Because the cool things that I talk about, some of the things that we did, may not interest you. But all of this other stuff seems to interest you. When I talk about my dad voting without having paperwork, my dad voting, Because the 1970s was different, my friends. Very different. Listen, it just was, it was what it was. And it is what it is. It's not like it's going to kill anybody, change the world. It might actually benefit the world. Say, hey, yeah, we have issues, we have problems. Because so many of us, we just deflect and act like, pretend like nothing's happening. We act like over there, that doesn't happen. Yeah, people don't get hit by cars either, People don't drown. People don't have heart attacks. People don't die, Yeah, things happen. And things happen to everybody. There's nobody who's exempt from something happening to them. So this is why I sit here today. Not so much to prove and defend, but to share that my story is my story, and I'm going to share it when I find fit. If you choose to like it, not like it, that's for you to decide. Either way, it doesn't change how I feel about it. Because you know what? Sometimes honoring somebody's legacy is remembering them and talking about their stories. This is what the ancestors did. They sat around the fire and they told stories. They shared stories about the great warriors, the great accomplishments, and the things that people did. Because we don't do that now. If Facebook is that, It's a terrible way of doing it because we're not doing it right. You know, that's why I hold drum circles, because the drum circle encompasses people's. That's just why I asked people in the beginning to share, to talk, because it's not just about banging drums and say, "Oh, we're done." Hey. No, it's about connection. It's about community. It's about saying, "Hey, you know what? Thank you for listening. Thank you for accepting me for who I am. Good drummer or not. Thank you. I appreciate it. You recognize me." And this is how we get to know other people, a little piece and part of their story, or how they're feeling, what they're at, where they're at. And then we share at the end again. In the end, we share because something may have shifted, something may have changed. It's like going to a massage therapist, right? When you first go there, you feel like crap. You're out of alignment. Or chiropractor, or my friend Tal when he does his body work. You go there all crimped over and, out of sorts. But then when it's done, you get up and then you're renewed. You have this new sense of renewal, this new sense of, wow, I needed that. I needed that. And you know what? You should never be afraid to share your story. The only thing I say is don't expect too much after you share your story. If you're looking for a raw or some kind of acknowledgement, you're wasting your time. I didn't post this stuff for an acknowledgement and a rah-rah or someone's opinion. They gave it because there's a comment box on my thing. It doesn't matter if they're in agreement, disagreement with me. They don't pay my bills. They don't take care of my family. They don't pay my property taxes. They don't pay my rent. They don't feed me. My wife does, so I'm accountable to her. She helps me, I help her. And the people that I work with and associate with, I'm accountable to them. But the average person, he just feels like it's okay to just share or just say, that can't be true. It doesn't matter what I say because you ain't going to believe me regardless. You already fixed in your mind that it ain't true. I can care less if you think it's true or not. So this is where the abrasive Iggy comes out. Really don't care. If you believe me or you find it irresponsible, it doesn't matter. Somebody is going to appreciate the story I share. And if that story touches them, it touches them. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I'm not going to pretend like that didn't happen. Why did I choose to share that story? Because I'm hearing a lot of stuff and I'm watching a lot of things occur and a lot of misconceptions about, people coming to this country doing the good and the right things. Because remember, sometimes when we come here, we're doing it because we want to survive, we want to do better. And sometimes we don't want to hurt people, and we don't realize we're hurting people. And now the story that I'm sharing is, you're pretty much saying that I'm hurting people because I'm sharing this story. It doesn't matter, because you're going to believe it or not believe it, so it doesn't change anything. But I do want to know one thing, and this is a misconception. Everybody thinks everybody who comes here is a hard worker. Everybody thinks that everybody who migrates here is here to bust their ass and do stuff. No, that's not true. Because I know too many people who come here and they suck off the system. And, they probably wouldn't be watching here anyhow because they're too busy sucking off the system. But those of you who know me, and those of you who also immigrate as well, who come here and immigrate to this country, I know who you are, hard worker ones. I know who those people are. And I associate with a lot of those people. And I know their stories to some degree. But there's like this thing that intertwines with their stories. We all wanted something better. We don't miss our countries like we used to miss our countries, like others do. This is my country, and I'll do my best to defend it. I'll do my best to appreciate it, but I'm not going to badmouth it. And this is why I share my story, because I love the United States of America. Does she love me? It doesn't matter, because the people of the United States is what makes the United States, not the government. The government is just an institution of people that we elected to represent us. And when we realize the people that we elected to represent us aren't doing our job properly, that falls on us. That's our fault for voting the same J-holes every single time. We have nobody to blame but ourselves when we get the results we have, good or bad. And I'm not picking anybody out by name or anything, because everybody has their own opinion about how they feel politically about their things. But you know what? Next time, those of you who are citizens and were born here, you have the right to vote or not vote. That's your right. You know. But there was a man who had no undocumented papers, which was my father. Walked into the Social Security office, got a Social Security number, and I don't know what else he did. He got me a Social Security number. My Social Security number, the one I have. Listen, when I was in deportation thing, they asked me, "Do you want to change your Social Security number to the one you have?" Because the one I had was not falsified; it was just obtained illegally. I didn't do it. My dad did. My mom and dad did. But the Social Security I have, and I'm laughing because that card is what I was able to work. I was able to have a paper out. I was able to do all this stuff. And I was undocumented. As a paper boy. I was an undocumented paper boy. I'm over here laughing. I didn't think about that just now. You know, when the Columbus Dispatch hired me to deliver papers every day and on Sundays, I had to have a Social Security card. It wasn't like, oh yeah, you know. No, because they want to make sure that, you know, they're going to pay somebody that they don't have to do, they 1099 me, and so they don't have to pay taxes on me. It's funny, man. I don't know, man. I'm just over here laughing my ass off inside, and I'm just like busting out. There's a lot of you out here complaining that the voter this, voter that. Well, you know what? Do something about it. Get off your ass. Get to work. You know, vote for the right people that you think are right. And those of you who are having a hard time figuring out how to vote, ask people who vote. They'll help you. Ask people who have, you know, a passport. They'll help you. You know, it's not hard, man. You know, it's not hard. Listen, I know this is a very touchy subject for people, but the voter ID thing about the passport, listen, I know a lot of people are having a hard time with that. And I believe that so people like my dad don't circumvent the system. We have to avoid people from circumventing the system. Because, you know, you do grow up and you do realize that that was an act that, you know, shouldn't be happening. Regardless if it's your family or not. You know, if your family does a crime, you're going to most likely report them, right? You can't, because then you're accomplice to the thing. But here's the thing. I hear these stories about, oh, women are going to be disenfranchised, that minorities are going to be disenfranchised. That just says how much you think about disenfranchising, what you think about minorities and what you think about women. That you think they must be really dumb, that they don't know how to do anything. Well, you voted for these people. Tell them to help you. Go to their office and have them create a program for you to help you push that. But you know what? It's all about money. It's all about jockeying, you know, political parties and systems, you know. All this infighting stuff. If they really wanted to help us, they would. So you want to vote? Look at your political leaders. The next election, presidential election's coming up faster than you can think. The midterms are coming up. If you're voting the same people, you know, I mean, you're going to get the same results. It's kind of like, you know, when you're like, you got the same person that you're dating, you kind of know what they're going to do. They're either going to do a lot for you or nothing. So you really think about this. You know, I'm a firm believer. Where there's a will is a way. And why do I share my story? Because my dad had a will and a way, and he did it. He did it even without presenting whatever documents he had. I don't know what documents he had. He may have had his Peruvian passport, or he may have had his Peruvian citizenship birth certificate. I don't know. Things were different back then. Things are a little different now. Listen, I know that a passport costs you $160, but I know a lot of people go off and buy $200 shoes or a $500 purse. Okay? And then I know people who will spend money on things that they shouldn't be spending money on. If voting's that important to you, then figure it out. And that sounds cold, but you know what? No one else is going to tell you this, especially somebody that, like myself. Because you know what? Also, I had to go through the process. Listen, my aunt had to stand in line for 3 to 4 hours just to get my birth certificate. Okay? So I can get my documentations before I was going to get deported. This is a true story. Here I can drive downtown to the health department, and my son needs a documentation. I can pull his record like that. I don't need to wait 3 hours. That just tells you, in America, we have it too easy sometimes. I really believe that. Sometimes we have it way too easy, and you know what? The challenges that I see around the world compared to what we see here, I know that things are going on in Iran right now, and it's really sad to see that. And things are going on in Palestine. I see that. It's all over the world. It's not just isolated to one place. Now, Cuba, Venezuela, you got all that stuff going on. I don't know what it would be to live in a country that wouldn't let you do anything because you violated certain sanctities that they believe to be true. And this is why I'm a huge proponent of our Constitution. This is why I'm a big proponent of why separation of church and state is important to me. Because historically, the church has been malicious in their behavior. And I'm talking about my good old Catholic Church came with their crosses on these lands and found people to be savages. Los Indios, they killed the Indians, the Los Indios. That's a whole other story. The story is where we're at today and where we go tomorrow. If you're comfortable where we're at right now, then don't do anything. I used to think that holding a sign, this is a true story, would make a difference. I find that yes and no, and mostly no. Because it doesn't matter. If you're right, you're always going to find your group and the people with the similar narrative. The people who support you will always support you because they believe what you're doing. The people who don't support you will never support you because they don't believe in what you're doing. So it doesn't really matter where you go and how you present yourself and how you protest or speak your voice. There's always going to be somebody there to remind you that you're wrong or that you're right. That's why we can't get anywhere, because no one can find that common ground. No one can put their difference aside for a moment and say, I know that you're not right. I know that you're wrong. And I know that, can we meet in the middle somewhere? Where's the middle? It has to get so maliciously violent and so abrupt. And quite frankly, when I watch our political leaders and the way they talk to each other right now, it's bothersome because it shows how they truly are. And the people who you thought would have candor and more reserve, they're showing their colors. They're showing who they really are when they throw the F-bomb or where they, say things that you would think is kind of out of character for them. I'm not saying that you can't do that, but it's a good example to learn and to witness that. And so when I witness that, I'm going, there it is right there, man. That's a part of who they are when they say certain things. Like Trump, you already know what you're getting with him. He's loud, he's abrasive. I don't think people voted for him because They wanted a nice, polite guy. They wanted somebody that would represent a part of our, population, and that population voted. But then you watch your congressional leaders and your senatorial leaders and how they are representing themselves and coming down to that level as well. Thinking that that's going to somehow maybe sway us or whatever. I don't know. It's one thing if one person does it and we can tolerate that one person. But everybody starts doing it, then it's kind of like, okay, where's the common decency? Where's that, I don't know, that reserve, where's that? Can you speak without being vulgar type thing? I have nothing against speaking vulgarly, if you need to use it. But I think certain things have to be used in certain connotations. It's just, I watched all these things play out. I watched the news and how people get upset with certain things. And some things are valid to have a response, and some things are just like, doesn't really change anything. Some guy died and he's glad he died. But yet if he died, everybody would be celebrating in the streets who didn't like him. Kind of like that guy they shot, how some people came out and were like, he deserved it. I don't know. I'm just saying. Everybody's got their dark stuff. Everybody's got their light stuff. Sometimes one is more stronger than the other. But regardless, there should be a balance and a little bit of rapport within that. But, like I said, not to beat a dead horse here, but my story is my story. If I choose to share it, I'm going to share it. If you like it, fine. If you don't like it, that's fine too. Not really. I posted because I wanted to share, and I thought it was important to share. And never stop sharing if you think it's important to share. I just tried to be respectful. That's all. But the story is about my family, not about anybody else. It's about how we got here and what we did to survive and to make it in this country. My examples weren't about other people. My examples were just about myself and where I come from. If I ever get into examples of other people, then that's a debate. And that's something that we talk about and hash out. But the stories that I shared just recently, those are my life stories. My choice to share. And I will keep sharing as long as I feel like I want to. All right, guys. I thank you for your time. I appreciate you all for being here and being able to take some time out of your busy schedules and just sit here and listen. And, I'll be in Hillsboro this weekend drumming. And Naturally by Nature, my friend Kelly's space. That starts at 6 p.m. If you can make it, you're going in that direction, I'll be there. That's kind of closer to Cincinnati than it is Columbus. So I'll talk to you guys later. Peace and love. Be well.